The human mind is a complex network of thoughts, emotions, memories, and perceptions, all constantly working together to shape the way we experience reality. Most people view psychological disorders as something distant. Something that only affects other people and could never happen to them. But reality is often far more complicated than that. Today, we'll be taking a look at a wide range of psychological conditions, starting with some of the most common and well-known disorders, and ending with conditions so rare and unusual that most people have never even heard of them. Some of these conditions affect millions of people around the world. Others have only been documented a handful of times. If you'd like to vote on future videos, suggest topics, or take part in discussions about upcoming episodes, you can join the Night Shift Telegram channel using the QR code on the screen or the link in the description below. Chapter 1: Common but Dangerous. Depression. Depression is one of the most common psychological disorders in the world, affecting hundreds of millions of people every year. Many people think depression is simply feeling sad for a few days, but in reality it can be much more serious than that. People suffering from depression often lose interest in things they once enjoyed. Hobbies, relationships, goals, and even everyday activities can begin to feel meaningless. Simple tasks such as getting out of bed, taking a shower, or replying to a message can suddenly feel exhausting. Depression can also affect sleep, appetite, energy levels, concentration, and overall physical health. What makes depression especially dangerous is that it often becomes invisible to others. A person may continue going to work, attending school, or spending time with friends while struggling with an intense battle that nobody else can see. Although depression is one of the most studied psychological conditions in history, it remains one of the leading causes of disability worldwide and continues to affect millions of lives every single day. Social anxiety disorder. Social anxiety disorder is far more than simple shyness. Most people feel nervous before giving a presentation, meeting new people, or speaking in front of a crowd. For someone with social anxiety, however, even everyday interactions can feel overwhelming. A simple conversation, making a phone call, ordering food, or asking a question can trigger intense fear and stress. People with social anxiety often worry that others are constantly judging them, criticizing them, or noticing every mistake they make, even when that isn't actually happening. As a result, many begin avoiding social situations altogether. Not because they dislike people, but because every interaction feels like a risk. Scientists believe this disorder is linked to the brain's threat detection systems becoming overly sensitive, causing ordinary social situations to feel far more dangerous than they really are. Today, social anxiety disorder affects millions of people worldwide and remains one of the most common anxiety-related conditions ever documented. Insomnia. Insomnia is one of the most common sleep disorders in the world. Almost everyone has experienced a sleepless night at some point, but insomnia goes far beyond occasionally struggling to fall asleep. For people suffering from insomnia, falling asleep can take hours. Others wake up repeatedly throughout the night or find themselves awake long before their alarm goes off. The effects don't end when morning arrives. A lack of sleep can lead to exhaustion, irritability, poor concentration, memory problems, and a noticeable decline in both physical and mental health. Scientists believe that insomnia is often linked to the brain remaining in a state of heightened alertness, almost as if it refuses to fully switch off, even when the body desperately needs rest. Over time, this constant lack of recovery can affect nearly every aspect of a person's life, turning something as natural as sleep into a nightly struggle. Obsessive-Compulsive Disorder, OCD. Obsessive-Compulsive Disorder, often shortened to OCD, is one of the most misunderstood psychological conditions in the world. Many people use the term to describe being organized or liking things a certain way, but real OCD goes far beyond that. People with OCD experience unwanted thoughts, fears, or urges that repeatedly enter their minds. These thoughts can become so persistent that they create intense anxiety and distress. To reduce that anxiety, a person may feel compelled to perform certain actions over and over again. This might include repeatedly checking locks, washing their hands, counting objects, or following specific routines. The problem is that the relief is usually temporary. Before long, the thoughts return, and the cycle begins again. Scientists believe OCD is linked to disruptions in the brain circuits responsible for processing fear, risk, and decision-making, causing certain thoughts to become almost impossible to ignore. For many people, OCD is not about perfection. It's about feeling trapped in a loop that they know doesn't make sense, but can't seem to escape. Panic disorder. Panic disorder is a condition characterized by sudden and intense episodes of fear, known as panic attacks. What makes these attacks especially frightening is that they can appear without any obvious danger or warning. During a panic attack, a person's heart may race, their breathing may become difficult, and they may feel dizzy, shaky, or disconnected from reality. Some people become so overwhelmed by the experience that they genuinely believe they are having a heart attack or are about to die. Even after the attack passes, the fear often remains. Many people begin worrying about when the next attack will happen, avoiding certain places or situations because they fear it could happen again. Scientists believe panic attacks are linked to the brain's alarm system becoming overly sensitive, triggering a powerful fight or flight response, even when no real threat exists. For many people, panic disorder is not the fear of danger itself. It's the fear that, at any moment, their own mind might convince them that danger is everywhere. Chapter 2: The Mind Starts Changing. Body Dysmorphic Disorder. Body dysmorphic disorder, often referred to as BDD, is a condition that affects the way a person sees their own appearance. Most people occasionally feel insecure about certain aspects of their looks. For someone with BDD, however, those concerns can become overwhelming. A person may become convinced that a particular feature of their face or body is deeply flawed, unattractive, or abnormal, even when other people see nothing unusual at all. As a result, many spend hours looking in mirrors, avoiding mirrors entirely, constantly comparing themselves to others, or trying to hide perceived imperfections. The condition can have a serious impact on confidence, relationships, work, and everyday life. Researchers believe body dysmorphic disorder is linked to the brain processing visual information differently, causing certain details to appear far more significant than they really are. What makes BDD especially difficult is that the suffering is real, even when the flaw itself may only exist in the person's own perception. For someone living with body dysmorphic disorder, the mirror doesn't always reflect reality. It reflects fear, insecurity, and a distorted image that can be impossible to ignore. Depersonalization disorder. Depersonalization disorder is a condition that affects the way a person experiences their own sense of self. People living with this disorder often describe feeling detached from their own thoughts, emotions, or even their own body. Some compare it to watching themselves from outside, as if they are observing their life rather than actually living it. Others report feeling like they are moving through the world on autopilot, disconnected from the person they used to be. What's especially unsettling is that most people with depersonalization disorder are fully aware that these feelings are not normal. They know they haven't actually left their body, yet the sensation can feel incredibly real. Episodes can last for minutes, hours, or in some cases, much longer. Researchers believe the condition may be linked to the brain's response to extreme stress, trauma, or anxiety, causing a temporary disruption in the way a person experiences themselves and their surroundings. For someone experiencing depersonalization disorder, the most frightening part is often not feeling lost in the world, but feeling lost within themselves. Misophonia. Imagine feeling an intense wave of anger, anxiety, or panic simply because someone nearby is chewing their food. For people living with misophonia, that reaction can be very real. Misophonia is a condition in which certain everyday sounds trigger unusually strong emotional responses. Common triggers include chewing, breathing, sniffing, tapping, clicking pens, or repetitive noises that most people barely notice. While these sounds may seem harmless to others, they can cause intense irritation, stress, anxiety, or even anger in someone with misophonia. Researchers are still trying to fully understand the condition, but many believe it may be related to the way the brain processes certain sounds and emotional reactions. Because the triggers are often ordinary everyday noises, avoiding them can be extremely difficult. School, work, restaurants, public transport, and even spending time with family can become challenging environments. What makes misophonia so unusual is that the sound itself isn't dangerous. Yet to the person experiencing it, a simple noise can feel impossible to ignore. Maladaptive daydreaming. Maladaptive daydreaming is a condition characterized by extremely vivid and immersive daydreams that can consume a significant portion of a person's time. Most people occasionally drift off into their thoughts or imagine different scenarios. For someone experiencing maladaptive daydreaming, however, these fantasies can become far more intense and difficult to control. People may spend hours creating detailed imaginary worlds, stories, characters, and conversations inside their minds. These daydreams can feel so engaging that they begin to compete with real life, making it difficult to focus on work, school, relationships, or everyday responsibilities. Some individuals even pace around, listen to music, or repeat certain movements while immersed in these imagined scenarios. Researchers are still studying the condition, and it is not yet fully understood. However, many believe it may develop as a way of coping with stress, loneliness, trauma, or emotional difficulties. What makes maladaptive daydreaming so unusual is that the person is fully aware that their fantasy world isn't real. The challenge is that, over time, the imagined world can start feeling more comforting than reality itself. Nightmare disorder. Sleep is supposed to be a place of rest. A place where the mind recovers, memories are processed, and the body prepares for another day. But for some people, sleep becomes something they fear. Nightmare disorder is a condition characterized by frequent and extremely disturbing nightmares that occur over and over again. These dreams often feel incredibly realistic, leaving a person terrified even after they wake up. Unlike ordinary nightmares, the details are usually remembered clearly, sometimes for hours or even days. Over time, many people begin dreading bedtime itself, knowing that another frightening dream may be waiting for them. This constant cycle can lead to anxiety, exhaustion, difficulty concentrating, and a growing fear of sleep. Researchers believe nightmare disorder can be linked to stress, trauma, certain medications, or other underlying psychological conditions. What makes this disorder especially cruel is that sleep should be one of the safest parts of the day. Instead, for some people, it becomes the place they want to escape from the most. Chapter 3: Reality Becomes Unstable. Alice in Wonderland Syndrome. In 1955, a British psychiatrist named John Todd described a strange condition in which people reported seeing the world in ways that seemed impossible. Objects appeared larger than they should be. Rooms seemed to stretch or shrink. Distances no longer felt accurate. Because these experiences closely resembled scenes from Alice's adventures in Wonderland, the condition eventually became known as Alice in Wonderland Syndrome. People experiencing it may suddenly perceive their surroundings in a completely distorted way, even though nothing around them has actually changed. Episodes can last from a few minutes to much longer, leaving a person confused and disoriented while they occur. Researchers believe the syndrome may be linked to migraines, certain infections, or unusual activity in areas of the brain responsible for processing visual information. Unlike hallucinations, people often understand that what they're seeing isn't real. The unsettling part is that knowing something isn't real doesn't stop it from feeling real. Dissociative Identity Disorder. In some cases, people have reported finding messages written in their own handwriting that they don't remember writing. Others have discovered purchases they don't remember making, conversations they don't remember having, or entire periods of time they cannot explain. For most of us, memory helps create a continuous sense of who we are. Dissociative identity disorder challenges that idea. People living with DID may experience two or more distinct identity states, sometimes accompanied by memory gaps that make parts of their own lives feel unfamiliar. Researchers believe the disorder is often connected to severe childhood trauma, with the mind developing different identity states as a way of coping with experiences that would otherwise be overwhelming. Despite how movies often portray it, DID is not about becoming a completely different person overnight. For those living with the disorder, the reality is often far more confusing. What makes dissociative identity disorder so unsettling is not the idea of becoming someone else. It's realizing that parts of your own life may feel like they belong to a stranger. Capgras Syndrome. A woman once became convinced that her husband had been replaced by an identical imposter. He looked the same. He sounded the same. He remembered everything her husband should remember. But she believed he was a complete stranger pretending to be him. This rare condition is known as Capgras Syndrome. People affected by it may recognize the faces of loved ones, yet feel as though something is fundamentally wrong. Because the emotional sense of familiarity is disrupted, the brain can sometimes arrive at a disturbing conclusion: the person must have been replaced. Capgras syndrome has been linked to neurological disorders, brain injuries, and certain psychiatric conditions, though researchers are still working to fully understand why it occurs. To everyone else, the person standing in front of them is clearly their family member, friend, or partner. But to someone experiencing Capgras syndrome, that certainty can disappear completely. What makes the condition so unsettling is that it doesn't change what a person sees. It changes what they believe is hiding behind the face they recognize. Cotard Syndrome. Most people spend very little time questioning whether they are alive. It's one of those things we simply take for granted. But in extremely rare cases, a person can become convinced that they no longer exist. This condition is known as Cotard Syndrome. People experiencing it may believe that they are dead, that parts of their body are missing, or that their organs have stopped functioning despite clear evidence to the contrary. Some patients have even claimed that their body is slowly decaying or that they have somehow lost their soul. What makes the condition especially unusual is that these beliefs can feel completely real to the person experiencing them. Cotard syndrome has been associated with severe depression, neurological disorders, and certain forms of psychosis, although researchers still do not fully understand why it occurs. To everyone around them, the person is clearly alive. They can speak, walk, eat, and interact with others. Yet in their own mind, they may already believe they are gone. What makes Cotard syndrome so disturbing is not the fear of death. It's the belief that death has already happened. Bonnet syndrome. Seeing things that aren't there is often associated with serious mental illness. But that isn't always the case. Bonnet syndrome is a condition in which people experience vivid visual hallucinations while fully understanding that what they are seeing is not real. The syndrome most commonly affects individuals who have lost part of their vision due to eye disease or age-related conditions. People may see faces, animals, patterns, entire buildings, or even complete scenes appearing in front of them. These images can be incredibly detailed and sometimes difficult to ignore. What makes the condition especially unusual is that the person is usually aware that the hallucinations are not actually there. They are not losing touch with reality. Instead, researchers believe the brain may begin generating its own visual information when it is no longer receiving enough input from the eyes. In a strange way, the brain starts creating images to fill in the gaps. What makes Bonnet syndrome so fascinating is that the hallucinations don't come from confusion. They come from a brain that is trying to make sense of a world it can no longer fully see. Chapter 4: Identity Collapse. Fregoli Syndrome. In 1927, psychiatrists documented a patient who became convinced that a single person was secretly following her everywhere. The strange part was that this person never looked the same twice. One day, they might appear as a stranger walking down the street. The next, they could appear as a cashier, a neighbor, or someone sitting across the room. Despite the different faces, she believed they were all the same individual in disguise. This rare condition became known as Fregoli Syndrome. People experiencing it may become convinced that multiple unrelated people are actually one person repeatedly changing their appearance. The condition has been observed in individuals with certain neurological disorders, brain injuries, and psychiatric illnesses, though its exact cause remains unclear. To everyone else, the people around them are clearly different individuals, but to someone with Fregoli syndrome, those differences can begin to disappear. What makes Fregoli syndrome so unsettling is that the world doesn't become unfamiliar. Instead, it becomes far too familiar. Dissociative Fugue. In 1887, a man named Albert Dada suddenly disappeared from his home in France. Weeks later, he was discovered hundreds of miles away. The strangest part was that he could not explain how he got there. Cases like this would later help researchers identify a rare condition known as dissociative fugue. People experiencing it may unexpectedly leave their normal lives and travel to unfamiliar places, sometimes for days, weeks, or even longer. During these episodes, they often appear completely normal to everyone around them. They can hold conversations, work, make decisions, and navigate unfamiliar environments without attracting attention. The mystery usually begins when the episode ends. Entire sections of time may be missing from memory, leaving the person unable to explain where they went or what they did. Dissociative fugue has often been associated with severe psychological stress and trauma, though episodes remain extremely rare. What makes the condition so unsettling is that the person doesn't lose track of where they're going. They lose track of who was there along the way. Shared delusional disorder, Folie à deux. Can a delusion spread from one person to another? As strange as it sounds, there have been documented cases where two people came to share the exact same false belief. This rare condition is known as shared delusional disorder, or folie à deux, which translates from French as madness of two. It typically occurs when a dominant individual develops a delusion and gradually influences someone close to them into accepting it as reality. The two people may begin believing the same conspiracy, fear, or false idea, despite there being no evidence to support it. In many cases, the individuals are family members, partners, or people who spend a large amount of time together. Because the relationship is often built on trust, the shared belief can become increasingly difficult to challenge. Although the condition is rare, documented cases have shown just how strongly human beliefs can be shaped by the people around us. What makes Folie à Deux so unsettling is that the delusion doesn't stay trapped in one mind. It finds a way into another. Body integrity dysphoria. For most people, losing a healthy arm or leg would be unthinkable. But in extremely rare cases, a person may feel that one of their perfectly healthy limbs does not belong to them at all. This condition is known as body integrity dysphoria. People experiencing it can develop an overwhelming belief that a specific part of their body should not be there. The feeling is often persistent and can last for years, causing significant emotional distress. Many individuals understand that the limb is physically healthy, yet the sense that it doesn't belong remains difficult to ignore. Because of this, some people may go to extraordinary lengths in an attempt to make their physical body match the way they perceive themselves. The condition remains poorly understood, though researchers have explored possible links to differences in the brain's representation of the body. Unlike disorders that involve dissatisfaction with appearance, body integrity dysphoria centers on a person's sense of ownership over part of their body. What makes the condition so difficult to comprehend is that the body itself isn't the problem. The conflict exists in the way the brain perceives it. Clinical zoanthropy. Throughout history, there have been people who genuinely believed they had become animals. Not metaphorically. Not as a joke. They truly believed their body, mind, or identity had transformed into that of another creature. This rare condition is known as clinical zoanthropy. People experiencing it may become convinced that they are an animal or are in the process of turning into one. Cases have involved a wide range of animals, including dogs, cats, snakes, birds, and even insects. During an episode, a person may begin behaving in ways they associate with that animal, sometimes mimicking movements, sounds, or habits. Because the condition is so rare, it remains poorly understood. However, it has been observed alongside certain psychiatric and neurological disorders. What makes clinical zoanthropy so unusual is that the person doesn't simply admire the animal. They become convinced that the boundary between human and animal no longer exists. And once that boundary disappears, reality can begin to look very different. Chapter 5: The Abyss. Alien Hand Syndrome. In some documented cases, people have reported their own hand acting against their wishes. Not shaking from nervousness. Not moving by accident. Actually performing actions they never intended to make. This rare neurological condition is known as alien hand syndrome. People affected by it may feel as though one of their hands has developed a mind of its own. The hand can reach for objects, move unexpectedly, or interfere with actions being performed by the other hand. In some cases, patients have even described feeling as though the limb belongs to someone else entirely. Although the condition is extremely rare, it has been observed following certain brain injuries, strokes, and neurological disorders that affect communication between different regions of the brain. The most unsettling part is that the movements are real. The hand is not imagined. It is attached to the person's body, yet its actions can feel completely outside their control. One patient reportedly described the experience as living with a mischievous stranger attached to their arm. And perhaps that's what makes alien hand syndrome so disturbing. The conflict isn't between a person and the outside world. It's between a person and their own hand. Kluver-Bucy Syndrome. The human brain constantly filters information, controls impulses, and helps us recognize danger. Most of the time, we never even notice it happening. But when certain parts of the brain are damaged, some of those controls can begin to disappear. One of the most striking examples is Kluver-Bucy Syndrome. This rare neurological condition can affect the way a person responds to fear, recognizes objects, and controls their behavior. People with the syndrome may become unusually calm in situations that would normally be frightening. They may also develop an overwhelming urge to examine or touch objects around them, even when doing so serves no purpose. In some cases, individuals struggle to recognize familiar objects despite being able to see them clearly. The syndrome has been linked to damage in areas of the brain responsible for memory, emotion, and behavior. Because these regions help shape how we interact with the world, the effects can be dramatic and deeply confusing. What makes Kluver-Bucy Syndrome so fascinating is that it reveals how much of our personality depends on systems we rarely think about. When those systems break down, even the most basic instincts can begin to change. Clinical lycanthropy. Long before modern psychiatry existed, stories of werewolves appeared in cultures all over the world. For centuries, they were dismissed as myths, legends, or superstition. Yet throughout history, there have been documented cases of people who genuinely believed they were transforming into animals. Not pretending. Not role-playing. Not making a joke. They were completely convinced that the transformation was real. This rare condition is known as clinical lycanthropy. People experiencing it may believe that they are becoming, or have already become, an animal. Some report changes in their body, while others become convinced that their thoughts, instincts, or identity are no longer human. In some cases, individuals have imitated animal behavior, movements, and sounds because the experience felt completely real to them. The condition is extremely rare and has been observed alongside several neurological and psychiatric disorders, though no single explanation fully accounts for every case. What makes clinical lycanthropy so fascinating is that it blurs the line between mythology and medicine. For thousands of years, people told stories about humans becoming beasts. Then doctors began documenting patients who sincerely believed the same thing. And that raises an unsettling question. How many legends began with someone experiencing something they couldn't explain? Fatal familial insomnia. There is a rare disease so devastating that once its symptoms fully appear, there is currently no known cure. And it begins with something most of us do every single night without thinking about it. Sleep. Fatal familial insomnia is an extremely rare inherited disorder that gradually destroys the brain's ability to sleep. At first, the symptoms can seem surprisingly ordinary. Difficulty falling asleep. Restlessness. Occasional insomnia. But over time, the condition becomes far more severe. As the disease progresses, sleep becomes increasingly fragmented until it begins to disappear altogether. Patients may experience hallucinations, memory problems, panic attacks, confusion, and a steady decline in both physical and mental health. The disorder is caused by a genetic mutation that damages specific regions of the brain responsible for regulating sleep. What makes fatal familial insomnia so terrifying is that the body never stops needing sleep. Every system continues to depend on it. Every function continues to require it. Yet the brain gradually loses the ability to provide it. There are diseases that attack the heart. There are diseases that attack the lungs. Fatal familial insomnia attacks something even more fundamental: the ability to rest. And once that ability is gone, the body has nowhere left to hide. Pathological self-cannibalism cases. Few behaviors are more difficult to comprehend than intentionally harming one's own body. Yet in extremely rare circumstances, there have been documented cases of pathological self-cannibalism. These cases have been associated with severe psychotic episodes, neurological disorders, brain injuries, and the effects of certain substances capable of dramatically altering perception and judgment. What makes these incidents particularly unusual is that they often occur during periods of profound mental disturbance, when a person's understanding of reality, danger, or even their own body may become severely impaired. In some reports, individuals appeared unable to fully recognize the consequences of their actions or understand the harm they were causing themselves. Because such cases are extraordinarily rare, they remain poorly understood and are often studied alongside other extreme disturbances of behavior and self-awareness. Unlike many conditions that affect perception, memory, or emotion, these cases demonstrate how deeply the brain influences our most basic survival instincts. The instinct to protect ourselves is one of the oldest and strongest drives humans possess. Which is why cases like these remain so disturbing. They reveal that under the most extreme circumstances, even that instinct can break down. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you'd like to help choose future topics, suggest ideas, or take part in discussions about upcoming videos, you're always welcome to join the Night Shift Telegram channel. You'll find the link in the description. Until next time.